All right, we're live. Kenny Casanova.
We're live.
Woo!
Yeah, all right. Thank you for having us on, Ed.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. Kenny's back as well, and we have Mad Maxine with us tonight.
All right.
And we have an agenda.
Where are you hailing from tonight?
I'm on the Space Coast of Florida.
So
okay.
Near Orlando, south of Orlando, a little bit on the Atlantic.
Right. What's going on there? Is it crazy with the COVID and all that?
It's not too bad. I live in a very small community, and we haven't been hit by it very hard. I think, people are trying to stay safe and wearing masks and everything, thank God. And so we're pretty good. I don't really go to the mainland very often. We're on a little barrier island, but, just trying to kind of stay close to home and do more writing. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cool. So we know you got a book out now. Can you tell us the name of the book and tell us a little bit about the book to start?
Sure. It's The Chronicles of Mad Maxine, and I'm going to actually switch glasses so I can see you better.
I like those glasses.
Thanks. That was a present from my little sister.
Now you look more studious, more like a writer. So
I can actually see. So the book is, is 3.5 decades in the making. I went into wrestling with the intention of doing kind of like an in-depth journalism project. I had a hero, George Plimpton, who did these kind of things. He went into football and golf and baseball, and he would work with the professionals, and then he'd write about it. And I just thought that was super cool. And then when I got into it, when I got into training, I just realized, wow, I really hadn't thought it through. I was not prepared for the fact that training was really hard, and the fact that I would become friends with the other trainees. And so I just couldn't write a memoir or an autobiography. So I ended up writing a novel, kind of loosely based on it, with kind of the architecture. I did do the training, and I did cover a Ku Klux Klan rally for the Black News. So some of the big pieces are true for sure. And then, embellishments.
Are there any names we would know for the trainees?
You mean people that I trained with?
Sure. Yeah.
Primarily, like my bestie was, she became Luna, although when I knew her, she was either Gertrude or Angèle Vachon. So she was kind of like my main friend.
Okay.
And you wouldn't probably have known of the other ones. They didn't actually end up kind of going forward.
Right.
Now, what made you want to get into wrestling? Because I read that you were a college basketball player.
Yeah. I played college basketball at University of Kentucky. I was looking for like a big, weird project. And the other options were, I had a friend who was in the Renaissance Festival, and I thought that might be worth kind of joining up and learning about that. And then I had another friend who was going to Chad, Africa, as a water engineer, and that was when Libya was invading. And I thought, well, that would be really cool, but my French isn't super strong, so I just thought, I'd probably be shot and killed. So maybe not. Maybe that was a risk too far. So wrestling was kind of like in the sweet spot. It was, it was something I didn't really know anything about, and I had a college boyfriend who watched it Saturday mornings, and I got to see Gordon Soley back then, but I didn't grow up with it, and so this was just a brand new world for me.
How tall were you? You were billed at 6'4". Is that how tall you are?
Yeah, well, I'm 6'2". 6'2".
Okay.
With the mohawk, 6'4".
2 inches of mohawk.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, I wore the Harley wrestling boots, and that added a little bit too.
Right.
Okay.
So at 6'4", though, good for basketball and wrestling, I would say.
Yeah.
You started with basketball, right?
Lots of sports. Yeah, I played center and forward for UK. I was a lady cat way back when, and always loved sports. Played a lot of tennis. Played basically everything. Did a lot of volleyball and just love sports of all kinds.
So how did wrestling translate differently or the same when you jumped out of, say, basketball and into the new world in the squared circle?
Well, it's a lot of acrobatics. Like when you break it down, you're kind of throwing yourself all over the place. One of the hardest things for me was learning just how to do a simple bump, and because keeping your head off the mat and your arms spread out wide and your knees up, and doing that. They just drill. Donna Christiantello was my trainer. Mula really didn't show up until I was getting ready for my matches at what was then known as WWF. So they just 4 hours a day, you would just do a single move again and again and again. And, just by not giving up, I finally got it.
Now, so what was it like the first time that you met the fabulous Mula?
She was a character. She had her little kingdom, in Colombia. She had like it's kind of like a compound where all the lady wrestlers lived. And she had bought these barracks from the nearby military base, and that's where we lived. And then she had this big house that was right next to the wrestling ring. And it was interesting. I mean, the trainees were kind of a little bit separate from the veterans, the women who were already, wrestling in matches. And, so there was kind of like, it was in the era in the mid 80s, it wasn't, it hadn't been totally kind of explained to everybody. And so there was a real emphasis on not sharing with the trainees what was really going on. And, like they didn't teach us how to sell until like at the very last minute, right before you're going to get into actually go into a match, because they didn't really want to let us know what was going on. I mean,
if you were going to drop out, right? So they didn't want to smarten you up until you were actually working in the ring.
Exactly. So I thought that was weird, because I just thought, of course everybody knows, but not everybody did. And so, you just kind of like go, okay, that's how you want to play it.
See, I wrote Kamala's book for him. I'm a ghostwriter. And he told me a funny story how they didn't even smarten him up after he had been trained some by the great Mephisto out in Mississippi area. And he went into his first match, a battle royal, and they said they were going to put him over, let him win the battle royal. It was a $10,000 battle royal. And he got all excited, and he called his girlfriend up and he said, hey, honey, we're going to have new tires on the car and we're going to eat good tonight. I'm winning the battle royal. I'm winning. And she was all, excited. And at the end of the night, when he won, they paid him $50.
Yeah.
And he went home, and she didn't believe him, thought that he had done something with the money or something, and chased him out of the house with a shotgun, and he had to go sleep in the junkyard for the night.
Wow.
Yeah, so they didn't smarten people up, I guess, at some points, even first match or so.
Yeah, that was. I mean, they did, and fortunately, I did make friends with some of the old time. They weren't old, but people who were veterans. Compared to us trainees. So among us, they really didn't play it like that. So I did actually have a pretty good idea going in once I was through training. But I just thought it was so strange not to smarten up the girls, as you say.
Who are some of the other female wrestlers that we would know that were at the compound?
Let's see. Leilani Kai was there. Princess Victoria. Let's see. I'm trying to draw on a little bit of a.
Do you know Brittany Brown?
I didn't know her. No.
You didn't know her? Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So how did you end up in WWF then? Mula brought you in then? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, and so I was dating a guy who was really into comics, and he had a comic of the character Storm. It was an X-Men comic, and she was this African-American kind of priestess, and she had this long flowing white mohawk and just kind of wore all this biker gear, and I thought that looked really cool. And I I just went ahead and found a place to give me a mohawk, and we made like a big production of it. Like a bunch of friends and I went down and brought some, champagne, and one Sunday morning, just zoop, zoop, and so, like I came up with my own persona, and I didn't really consult with Mula, and she was not very pleased with me about that because
Oh, she didn't like the gimmick then at first.
not at first. I mean, she didn't like the fact that I'd kind of taken, my own, had taken initiative to change my look because, she mostly wanted the people working for her to have long hair and to be, kind of skinny and pretty. And, I just, my hair will never be long, and, it's just not that kind of hair. So I figured a mohawk, and, mohawks are really cool.
Well, you want to stand out too, right? So if you look
Yeah,
like the rest of the bunch, there's nothing special going on. So
yeah, and I think when she saw me, she really saw dollar signs in my mohawk. I mean, she thought, okay, I can work with this, and she said, she wouldn't want me. She wouldn't have recommended that I do this, but as long as I've done it, then what the hell? Let's just go with it. And so went up to had my first encounter with WWF. It was Gorilla Monsoon. Was sitting there. It was in Stamford, Connecticut, and he had a contract ready for me to sign, and I was, I hadn't wrestled an actual match yet, so and I just told him that I would have to read the contract and get a lawyer to look it over because I wasn't just going to sign something that just didn't make sense to me. And so I never did end up signing that contract. And then afterwards, went to Poughkeepsie where they did their TV. And the first match I had was with Susan Starr, and then came up a second time and had a match with Desiree Peterson.
Was this like 84, 85?
85, actually.
85?
Yeah,
Okay.
I came, it was like September 84. I started training, and then it was February before I had my first match. So it was like 6 months, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. And I was like, oh man, I am so done with this. I've got to get out of here. This is just like, I can't do this endlessly. And so I think that was really the main reason I got the mohawk, is like, I got to do something to kind of get her moving on me, because there were women there who had been there for a year training, and it was like, I'm not training for a year.
So you debuted right before WrestleMania, right? The first WrestleMania?
I wasn't really clued into that. Actually, I think it was after. Are you talking about like the one where Wendy Richter and no, that was actually even before that, wasn't it?
Yeah, because that was that February or March of 85?
That was just slightly before WrestleMania. It was actually to push WrestleMania, right? So what was that? Something to settle the score, or what was it called?
The War to Settle the Score.
That's it. The War, is that it? The War to Settle. Yeah. So that was on MTV, and the idea was Vince was pushing to make the wrestlers really look like stars. So by putting them in MTV and really pushing that, along with the music superstars, then the wrestlers would look like superstars, and that was a build up for WrestleMania. So I'm going to guess she was just a tad before that. Does that sound right?
Right. Yeah. Well, the thing with Cyndi Lauper and Wendy Richter had already happened.
It did. Okay. Also, maybe not.
They so Mula was talking to me and other wrestlers I found out later about being the person who would go up against Wendy, but that ended up not happening. So, and that was fine. I mean, I have nothing but admiration for Wendy Richter.
How long did you work for the company then, WWF? Because you went to Florida after.
Yeah, yeah. Those 2 matches, I wrote the article and took photographs of the Klan rally, and then got the hell out and moved back down to, well, actually, Luna, Peggy, and I moved down to right outside of Miami. Luna's parents had a condo that we stayed at, and then tried to kind of connect with the wrestling scene down there, but really you needed to be in Tampa for that to happen. So eventually we moved. I moved up first and went to a Gold's Gym, because that's where all the wrestlers were. and made connection with one of the boys, and he told me to go talk to Wahoo, and then it just kind of snowballed. I had a pretty good run with Wahoo as my partner, and then Luna and Peggy came up later.
So before you left WWF, though, you must have made an impact because they were putting you on T-shirts for the new cartoon and stuff like that, right? They're the Hulk Hogan's Rock.
I was completely unaware of that. They didn't say anything to me about that. I was just like complete surprise.
But you wouldn't think they would do that for just anyone. So somebody must have been like, "Oh, she's perfect. Look she's got the mohawk. She's going to look good as a cartoon." Right? You don't have a picture of that.
I would love to have been a cartoon.
Let me see if I can find one here.
So we threw it up on the flyer there. Yeah.
I wish I had been a cartoon.
Yeah, but somebody must have saw some money in you. Maybe I'm wondering if Moolah maybe pushed it because she ended up taking it. So there it is, right there. Right, that's what you would have looked at. Looked like. Yep. That's great.
Yeah, I had my hairy vest and all.
So how did the clothes work back then with the outfit? Did you put the whole clothing together yourself? I know these days, I think, there's a whole costume department with WWE.
I would imagine. But, I just started out with just like a kind of off the shelf thing. And then when I moved to Florida, I wanted to have more of kind of I wanted to be more compatible with Wahoo. So I actually ended up buying a bunch of leather and making my own kind of leather, kind of Barbarossa kind of, savage looking thing.
Did you get that from Mad Max then? I mean, or is it more the name from Mad Max play on? Did you watch the movie Mad Max?
Oh yeah, Mad Max is one of my favorite movies, and I just loved it. And then that kind of and there were actual characters in there that had mohawks that I just love mohawks, and that's the haircut ever. Although it was really hard to find a job with mohawk, and after I got my haircut, it was like I had been working at Kinko's, and then I did the job for the Black News. For some reason, people think you're, not going to be utterly reliable when you have a mohawk. I don't know why. So I ended up getting a button that said, "It's only a haircut."
Yeah, because back then, I mean, we were still pretty conservative as far as individuality and like body
mods.
Road
Warriors hadn't happened yet. Yeah. I mean, there was Moolah when we first met. She told me about this lady wrestler, Bald Lady Angel. Have you all ever heard of her?
No, I'm not sure.
Bald, and Moolah said, "Oh, she's really ugly and she's really tough, really, really tough." And so, I mean, I think there have been people who've done it, but it kind of really sped up after. And then then when Luna came down to Tampa, or up to Tampa from Miami, she got connected with Kevin Sullivan in the Army of Darkness, and then she shaved the side of her head and kind of did all this crazy paint and just kind of ran with it. I mean, she was a real wrestler. I'm really sorry she's gone.
Did you do any Japan? Anything overseas?
I'm actually, I lived when I was a kid. My dad was in the military, and we lived for 4 years in Japan. And in my head, I thought I would love to go to Japan, but then I talked to some of the other women, and they were like, "Oh my God, they are just like they're shooters. They just really hardcore, and they just beat the hell out of you." And I'm actually probably lucky that I didn't get. I probably would have been, injured, because there's nothing that a short person wants to see, in the ring more than to see a tall person topple, and they would have just creamed me, I'm sure.
So overseas, Abdullah the Butcher used to book some for Giant Baba. He would book all the black athletes that came through, all the wrestlers.
Oh, is that right?
And he was like Moolah in that he would get a portion of their pay, everything.
I hope it was fair.
Yeah. So like he would bring them in, he would keep, I'm not sure exactly how much, but he would keep a chunk of it, and it would tick some people off. But I think with Moolah, you knew the deal, right? So if you signed on with her, she would get you work, but if you found other work somewhere else, you would have to throw back almost like an agent kind of fee.
Yeah, I heard of that happening, and I've heard of women saying, "No, that money is not due you." So yeah, I know that went on, but as I say, I only had 2 matches in with her. So
right, okay.
And you never knew what she was being paid versus what you were being paid. It wasn't like she said, "Oh, I'm just going to take X%," and because the money went directly to her, so she could have taken any amount actually. So there was no accountability, and I know that I saw in that Vice program that Wendy was trying to have her checks come straight to her instead, especially after her huge popularity with the Cyndi Lauper thing and Lou Albano, but that just didn't work out.
A Dark Side of the Ring or something? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I thought was a pretty good show. It was a pretty good show. They did a pretty good job.
Now, after you left the WWE or WWF back then, that's when they became extremely popular.
Right.
Did you have any regrets about that? Did you think
no?
No.
Because I just really, the vibe living in Colombia was just so oppressive. People were just like, it's just like I was tense vibe, and it was just not relaxed. And so for me, being able to go to Tampa, where I had friends and knew a lot of people, and they were just more laid back in Tampa. I mean, they were serious about what they were doing, but it was just much more my style. I just that kind of I don't know, I just really needed a more relaxed environment than what was available.
We have a couple questions coming in from a fan here. Tim wants to know, who was your favorite to work with?
I would say I loved working with Percy Pringle, who became somebody else later, but man, he was fun. He was just a wonderful talker, and we had this great match in Orlando, and I got to body slam Percy, which was really hard. He was a big guy, and he'd just make you look so good, and it was really fun. And then a really nice part of that was Peggy Lee Leather became his sister, and so we got to work an angle with that too. So thanks for the question, Tim.
He also wants. Did you ever think about going to Glow?
That was a little. Okay, so part of Glow was that there was a little bit of a feeling that the women in Glow weren't really well trained, and not compared to the people who trained with Donna at where, I mean, Donna Christiantella did my training, and I just, the idea that it was all about sexy costumes and eye candy. I think it was kind of like, yeah. And I think I actually, in retrospect, it was hilarious. And I think it would have been really fun to do. But I think there was a little bit of like, oh, those aren't real wrestlers. We're the real wrestlers because we were trained by the best of the best.
Did you move around a lot with Florida, or did you go out on your own to other territories, or?
I went to, I spent a good portion of my time in all over Florida, which I loved, and it was a complete hoot. And because I'd lived in Tampa for 7 years before that, and I'd finished up school at University of South Florida, and then I moved out west. I think it was Bosch. Is that right?
Paul Bosch.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to the Western Territory, lived in Baton Rouge, and it really, so that was it. Just a couple of matches with WWF, the time with in Florida, and then out west, and then I got the hell out. It was a total of 2 years. So
Houston, maybe Texas?
Yes, Houston.
Okay. Yep.
Didn't wrestle. Didn't get to wrestle in the Dallas area, which was too bad because my parents lived there at the time. So I would love to have had them coming. They were not super thrilled that I was doing this, but I thought it would be fun for them.
Our friend Ian Daniels, he wrote Dan Severn's book and Hornswoggle's book and a few others, and he talks about how Florida would send wrestlers over to the Bahamas. Did you wrestle at the Bahamas?
Yeah.
You did?
Yes, a lot. And like the first time I went to the Bahamas, I got like a police escort. This wealthy man, had the police come and get us and take us to hillside retreat, and it was just super fancy and really fun. And I kind of thought, oh, this is going to happen every time, but no, that was the only time. But yeah, I had I wrestled. I had Coco Samoa was one of my partners, and we went to the Bahamas frequently. And then I had a Haitian partner, Tyree Price, and then Norvell Austin and I also wrestled together. Although I don't think he and I went to the Bahamas, but that was really cool because after the matches, I mean, okay, so it's really dark and it's like this open air. The ring is in this open air kind of area with a big concrete wall around it, and there are just like a million people, and it's pretty exciting. And just they were like really into it. And afterwards, we get to go out and hang out with the Bahamian people, and that was just really cool to be able to kind of get a little peek into their lives. I really felt privileged to get that.
How long would you go when you went? Would it just be like a weekend, or be there a week, or?
Yeah, it'd be like 3 or 4 days.
Okay, just a couple matches.
Yeah, and then just to hop over and hop back, really. So, but we went there pretty frequently for a period of time there.
It was part of the loop, right? It was part of the loop. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Let's see. We had a couple of other questions coming in from Jamie Hemmings. Do you follow the current pro wrestling programming? If so, what are your thoughts on the women wrestling today?
I had confessed that I do not actually. I'm not an avid follower of wrestling. Today, I think it's a little like when I played basketball. It just made me twitchy to follow to watch other people doing what I used to do. I mean, I actually would sit and kind of get twitchy, I think there is some amazing talent out there. When I do catch it, but no, I haven't been following it.
You kind of can't blame her for that. I was a manager, some kind of like a Captain Lou, but more independent in the Northeast, never on TV or anything like that. But it was very difficult for me as a manager to watch an indie show. Like I never wanted to watch it because I wanted to be either part of it or that was it. The same as I'm also a wedding DJ. So if I go to somebody else's wedding, I'm constantly watching the DJ and say, "Oh, I wouldn't have done that. I would," and it almost bothers me. Like so,
yeah.
To separate yourself isn't like an unusual thing, I think, for some people. But.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Joe wants to know, what would your dream match have been, or anyone that you would have liked to have wrestled that you maybe didn't get a chance to?
I would love to have gotten in the ring with Wendy Richter. I just think she was just phenomenal, and she just had such fire, and really could wrestle. And she also just had good, she was a good talker, and she just had charisma. And I think that would have been really cool.
That could have been really good, being as if you were the heel and she was like the super baby face. That would have been really good.
Absolutely. Let's see. Before and after your WWF matches, Moolah was talking to. Do you remember anything that she said to you? Any pointers or advice?
So thanks, Javi. Before the very first match, she gave me a great wad of money, like hundreds of dollars, and told me to stick it in my boot. And so that wasn't just money for me. That was for all the, I guess, wrestlers who'd been wrestling, previously. And that was actually really good advice, because I had a match where everything got stolen, but I'd put my money in my boot. And so at least I had my money in my boot. And
they took your clothes, your civilian clothes?
They took my I had like 2 wrestling outfits, and they took the one that I wasn't wearing, and which was a brand new one. It was
good
super
Lord.
Cool. I know. And my camera and my journal. And so it was heartbreaking.
Was that a rib or was it thievery? Do you know?
It was thievery. They didn't, usually I would have, I would either, they usually didn't have like separate dressing rooms. I'd be in there with the boys. Occasionally I would have a separate dressing room, which was, either way, I wasn't going to be gawking at anybody's parts. But so this one time they had it in a place where it was completely unlocked, and I don't know why I didn't think about it. I just assumed that somebody would take care of that, and when I got back, it was just everything was gone. It was a bad night. Yeah.
So you had to leave in your boots and the whole deal?
Yeah. Bruce Tharp, who was a referee, took care of me that night. He just I was very upset, and he's just like, okay, it's going to be okay. And so the next day we had a match in New Orleans, and I needed something to wear. So, excuse me, went out to a thrift store and found a sequined drum majorette outfit and duct taped that on my body and spray painted a whole bunch of, pardon me, garbage bags and, somehow attached them to my body. And then that was my very last match. I actually wrestled Dark Journey, and she potatoed me pretty hard. And I was like, in my outfit, I was always like, I wasn't going to have a wardrobe malfunction. Everything I wore, I just made sure every part was like super strong, and it was no way it was going to come off me, because I just to me that was just so cheesy. It was like, not happening. So that was the one time it did happen to me, and I just flashed like 10,000 people, and it was like, oh no. Was not my best moment. So I got in the car after the match, and I went the wrong way. I went away from Baton Rouge, finally got back in, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Huh. So can you tell us more about Luna Vachon then? You said, was she around in Florida? I would think
yeah. We lived together. Like I say, we lived in her family's condo, and then she and Peggy eventually came up to Tampa, and for a time we did have a house together. Her aunt was Vivian Vachon, and her stepdad and uncle, the very famous French Canadian wrestling family. And she had wrestled, she had been to Mula's before to try to get trained, and that kind of ended in disaster when, Mula sent her out to this, excuse me, got a frog in my throat. Sent her out to this, she pimped her out, and so that was the end of that. And then eventually, Angèle, she left and went back to Canada, and then came back to Mula's, because by then Mula really had the women's kind of thing sewn up with Vince Sr. So Luna was like, I think of her as Angèle, actually. She's a sweetheart, just nice person, always looking out for like the underdog. If anybody had a problem, she was going to like help them out. But she also was super serious about wrestling, and she just put everything into it. And she really did have a really solid career. I just a shame that she left us so soon.
Were you around when she was in a band? I know she did some music. No, okay.
No, yeah. That was after my time.
Okay.
I didn't even know that, actually.
Oh, okay. There's pictures of her with someone else that's kind of made up like her, and they were in some kind of band together. I'll take a look for a shot of it. And
heavy metal, I assume.
Yeah. So I'll see if I can find on that and shoot it over to Ed. Maybe he can post it.
So your first wrestling match ever was with WWF. What were your feelings before you went out through the curtains with all the fans cheering?
Sheer terror. I was actually scared, of being in the ring for many, many matches. It took a long time for me to kind of realize that, it was the crowd was with me. I just needed to stop seeing the crowd as that I was working with the crowd, and that they weren't going to come at me and hurt me. I mean, that's not actually entirely true, because if you're a heel, you kind of want them to be so pissed that they would actually come after you. I mean, I remember people telling me they just love having people throw their Cokes at them, because that means that you're really getting some heat. And I was like, really? It's like, ooh. I guess, personality wise, Angèle always wanted to be a heel, never wanted to be anything else. I definitely think my temperament is much more suited for a face. which is what I got to be when I was with Wahoo down in Tampa. And I mean, I was, being able to, hang out with the fans and sign autographs and say hi to little kids, tell them to do well in school.
Did he help with psychology and all, like ring stuff with you early on at Wahoo?
What do you mean, psychology?
Like ring psychology, like knowing when to do stuff in the ring at certain times and stuff. Was he helping you, like a bit of a mentor? Yeah,
it's like my mentor for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. He would talk to me in the ring, and the thing with Percy, Percy was managing Rick Rude at that time, and that was just it was really cool. And so he would just kind of guide me through it. Actually, I was still very, very green.
I sent you the pic. Oh, he's gonna bring it up, I think. I guess it was called Nasty Savage, and she had a couple albums out.
Oh my God, that is cool. And, love those outfits.
I don't know if the Mohawk idea was ripping you off or not. Maybe.
I never, and it did not bother me at all. I mean, the more Mohawks, the better.
Cool. So you want to tell us a little bit more about the book?
Sure. It just is a period of, it just is kind of, okay, it's a novel. It's loosely based on my experience and its experiences, and it runs from when I arrived to when I left. And kind of, it's kind of a coming of age book where, you're kind of learning. The character is learning about this new world and trying to figure out how she's going to survive it. And in the meantime, kind of getting to know the town of Columbia, South Carolina, and its weirdnesses. I mean, it was at the time they were still flying the flag of Dixie on the Capitol building. And there was a Klan rally that was getting ready to happen. I mean, there's a lot of African Americans who lived in that, and still do in Columbia, and to have this group from North Carolina come in and try to recruit South Carolinians into the Klan, to their kind of paramilitary version of the Klan. It was just, the Black News didn't want to send their own reporter in, so I volunteered. I overheard them talking at Kinko's, and I thought it sounded like a good project, and I could keep my hand in journalism because I wasn't writing the book that I thought I was going to write, and so I just kind of, and in fact, in terms of my career after wrestling, that one freelance gig, and I eventually became the managing editor of all this group of newspapers. Anyway. It got me more interviews and probably more jobs than anything else I've ever done. So it was a risk, but it was scary, and they burned a cross and they said terrible things. But it was, it worked out because it really just it was like one of those kind of bright moments, when I was actually pretty brave.
So wait, so you were working at Kinko's at this time? Yeah.
I overheard these two African American, well-dressed African American men talking about this Klan rally coming up, and how they were worried about sending their own reporter in. And I said, well, I could do that for you. And they said, what is the Kinko's person saying to me? Wow. And so we worked it out, and they held it out. They were supposed to hold it in town, and then the city had the foresight to make them move it to kind of 20 miles outside of town, and they just had many fewer people show up, and it was, I think it was a bust for the North Carolina people. It was this Glenn Miller guy who was just this, real scary fella. So they were, as I say, not successful in recruiting South Carolinians to their cause.
So were you undercover, kind of? You went in, they didn't know who you were?
Yeah, or? I told them that I was a freelancer, and I was gonna be, trying to find a place for the article. I didn't tell them I was working for the Black News.
Right.
I don't think that would have been very wise.
Right.
No.
And now this opened up more and more gigs with that group later?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. In fact, So after my last match, I went back to Washington D.C. where my sister lived, and ended up getting a job from there, moving to Boston, where I worked for a Black newspaper called the Bay State Banner. So, kind of a couple of threads in my career have been working for African American newspapers and the environment, and then later I did a lot more with health and science.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is
Been a
that
good
where your
career.
schooling was? Your schooling in writing?
Yeah, I had a journalism degree from the
You did,
University
okay.
of South Florida. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
exactly. Yeah, love writing. I still love writing.
Cool. Evident in the book, right?
Yep.
So, what were your thoughts on going back to the wrestling world, or the? Did you have any thoughts on the Fabulous Moolah controversy with the Battle Royal being named after her?
I thought it was gratifying to find out that many people knew about her. And what I find interesting is like, well, that cat is out of the bag. I mean, everybody knows, and if you don't know, then you're in denial. And it's just like she, she was a heel in the ring, and she was a heel in real life. I mean, why is that surprising? It's not. It's not surprising.
Did you see anything firsthand that you could share with us uh, on maybe why she was a heel in real life?
Well, I mean, she tried to get me to go out to the perv out west. I mean, she, had me, call him and talk to him. And this was the deal where she would, where the guy was going to pay, would pay me $500 to go out there and take pictures. But when I pressed him on it, and I said, well, is this really just for photographs? And he said, well, if I'm paying you $500, I don't think you know what I'd want. It's like,
Jeez.
totally skeezy, gross, and well known. I mean, this was and I mean, I think if you're going to be up and up about it, just go ahead and say that. But the fact that this was, she was arranging it, and she was making money on it, and it was
So
just,
she got another, like, a booking fee.
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, it was still her girls. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess she kind of figured that she owned the girls, and in fact, the way it worked, a lot of the women didn't have cars or telephones, and so getting a job outside of the compound was hard. I had, so you would go into debt to her, for grocery money or rent, and she'd cover you, but and against your future earnings at matches. But then if she asked you to do something, there was no like ask to it. You had to do it.
Then
I mean,
you
it
owe me
was
kind of thing, right? Yeah.
exactly. It was a
Huh.
coercive situation. So anyway, I mean, I think this didn't happen to everybody. I think she probably targeted the younger women, the trainees, who were not as kind of clued in. But I think it's all been kind of documented.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, do you want to show us something on the book, like where they can get it, or tell us what it's in an e form?
Yeah, it's
correct
on.
now.
It's on Amazon. It's an ebook on Amazon. I'm working like heck to get a print book, because I know that's that's like people like, I want a print book with your name in it, and maybe a picture. So I'm
Yeah,
working on
that's
that.
huge part of it these days too, because
I
our
know.
whole group is about people that like wrestling books, and a big
I
part of their sales. Some of these guys don't even read the books; they just want the physical book for a
the
collection, and
copy.
maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
an autograph on it. Come see you at a Comic-Con to have you sign it or
Right.
something. And a lot of these guys these days, they're making a whole nother career out of just these appearances, where they might
Yeah.
sell a book in an 8x10 or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And yeah, those fan events are really fun, actually.
have you
Super
done
fun.
many, or
No, I've only done
some?
one. I did
Okay.
one down in near Tampa, and it was really a good time. It was it was nice to think that like my career was super short,
Mhm.
but there were still people out there who kind of remembered that me being in the ring, and that was just really gratifying.
It was a right time, right place kind of situation because some of these guys, even today, if they get on the right channel, they get in WWE for a month or two, they can continue on and on and on because there was their TV experience and there was their little moment, under the spotlight. So, I think you hit it at the right time. So I'm sure after this too, some people are probably watching now, the different promoters and stuff. So you probably, people will hit us up and say, how can we book her? So
once they get the vaccine for the COVID-19 virus, I'm all yours.
Yeah. Cool.
Whenever that will happen.
Cool. Yeah, and if you need some help too with the publishing aspect of it, there are a bunch of us that do it. So we'll help you out with that a little if you need it, because I know that some of this is you. Great. So I know what it feels like to be a one-man show on these books. So
yeah.
How long have you been working on the book? Were you working on the book for?
It wasn't like steadily for 3.5 decades, but it feels like that.
Right.
Like I probably, it's embarrassing because it just has taken so damn long, but like 10 years. And then, I looked around, I went and saw that a couple of friends who I hadn't talked to for a while had died. And then I was like, oh crap. And then this COVID thing, and it's like, oh my God, if I don't publish this book, I could die before this happens. So I might as well just go ahead and kick it out the door.
I remember 3 years ago, a guy named Pablo in UK it's called Turn Chuckle. Maybe
he's awesome. Yeah.
So he contacted me and said, hey, maybe you could help her with her book. I know she's working on it, and I don't really remember what became of that. I might have emailed someone, or I don't know, but it was still in the works. So that was a while ago. So 3 years ago.
A really nice podcast, BBG, I think it's called.
Okay.
He did. He and I had a chat about a week ago or so.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's awesome.
Cool. So
so I don't know. It's just like I just been like, I don't know. I just worried about the reaction, and it's like then at some point you just have to like be, get brave and just go ahead and put it out there into the world.
Yeah, because it's your baby. I know what that feels like. Like, okay, I'm finally going to show it to you now. Please don't.
I know. Be kind.
Don't dump on it.
Yeah.
So cool. Can we get that link up so they can see where to get the ebook if they're salacious?
I put it in the comments.
Okay.
Great.
So if they're chasing for that book right now, but there will be eventually a physical copy out, and
as soon as I can, as humanly possible. As soon as I can.
And if people are interested in hearing, some of how this works these days, or some of the ghostwriters like me, a lot of people will print up like maybe 2,000 copies to start for a smaller print run, and actually have them printed up, at a printer. And then like Amazon has really taken the world by storm. Amazon prints books up on demand, so I could have no stock at all, and one guy in Japan might want to buy a book, and overseas Amazon will print that one book and then mail it for them, and then give you a royalty of like $6, $7, $8 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So you can have sales happening in Japan. So that's why the world is kind of flat.
I think it's pretty cool.
We can compete with big publishers because of the technology and all out there these days. So I'll talk to you more about some of that if you need some help.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yep. All right.
Is there anything else that that you want to talk about? I know you've had an interesting life. I mean, just reading your Wikipedia, you've done some interesting things.
Yeah, I have had an interesting life, and so far, I like to say it's not over yet. When I moved to Florida, I started a theater group with a friend of mine, and my brother-in-law Clark Sims writes our plays, and they're just hilarious. And my husband is a talented musician. He does all our music, and so it's kind of like a family affair. And we just, we have this small community and put on our shows down at the state park and just have a ball. So, we're just trying to find ways to keep life interesting, and there's always something else going on.
Is that art in the background that you collect? What are we looking at? I see sculptures or something like that.
I love thrift stores, and I love finding treasures in thrift stores. So yeah, there's weird little sculptures.
Cool.
I just my house is full of them. It's kind of scary.
Now you were on an HBO show as well, right? An episode.
Yeah. For a while there, like that was the Real Sex
Okay.
the show. I produced several erotic art auctions and got all these artists in Washington D.C. to, make art and participate in these auctions. And that was a fluke. I just, that was back when faxes were still used. I faxed them, and they said, "Sure, we'll come on down."
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, it was really cool. And in fact, the last show I had was huge, massive, and in this warehouse, and I was able to buy my house from my ex with that with the money I made on that auction.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
And the artists made I didn't rip them off.
Sure.
I tried to be fair. So,
See,
yeah,
Ed's
it was really
pretended
fun.
he has no clue, but he has the whole DVD collection of that series.
Okay.
Is that right?
The only thing I remember about that show
Entertaining.
when they would hold the thing up and they would go take 4, right? That's when they would. That's all I remember. About
See,
the show.
I just took a guess he loved it.
I mean, I'm sure I was probably I was a teenager. Of course, I've seen every one of them.
Intriguing, of course.
So cool.
Well, that's cool.
So the book is it's at book2. I had a link. You said you put that in
books2read.com.
Right. So so check out the
You can also
messages
just
on there.
Google the Chronicles of Mad Maxine, and it'll come up if you just Google it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Any more questions from the?
No. I think that this is really exciting. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for having me on. It's really a pleasure.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll see you guys.
Take care.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.